Lojong Consider, Latte was Lojong Gong, Naja, Roth, City, Rongi, and Latte, Padon, Guy, Chief Mender, two minutes for my two some Lojong Chesson, Rongi, Rongi, Chetordo, Roll City. Tenga, Tenga, Dharma, that's how I don't Lojong gone in, and a Lojong gone back, Gala Lojong Yoni, gone now, Maranga, Najas, there's a chill. Long someone there's a chill, Magena, and I would take Mala, Yona, someone. Magena, Panjol, Mala, Yona, some. And if you're lost, Chero Song, and it is not that it looked young, that was my toy.
Furthermore, it is said in the instructions on the 7 points of mind training, where we find ourselves in the 6th point, which explains the commitments that one takes upon oneself as a practitioner of mind training. It says there, in the words of Chakra Yeshe Dorje, do not allow gods to turn into demons. This means to say that we should not allow our pride, our self-appreciation, etc., to grow as a result of the mind training that we practice. We should not think ourselves along such lines, should not think of ourselves along such lines as being great and wonderful practitioners and having brought about great qualities through the course of our practice. And we should also not covet the qualities of others. For instance, if we see another practitioner who has greater qualities than ours, then we become jealous, and the way we go about thinking like if there only were a means, how I could bring about such qualities within myself. So as we continue with the practice of mind training, we should make sure that it actually does what it is designed to do, and it should not be a cause of our pride, of our ego, of our self-appreciation growing, of taking ourselves more important and ever more important, which is not the case. Rather, it should help us to diminish that idea, and the best of cases, and the most ideal of cases, even to eradicate it altogether.
I don't get two cassettes now, no? Lojong cassette wrong now, no? Jate, Jetordo, Jate, Shewa, Torwa, then is Zapagam Toba, that is good. Shewa Toba Sadi. Can change a Tamata Sao, two gender, then Mamumborg and Nonga, and Yopo, and Nonaja, Yopo Tama, Robert, and Naranga Sanji, and Najar Meva, and it's in a mesa zone. In
this way, while we train ourselves in mind training or similar practices for that matter, it could happen that after a while of practicing, our pride and our arrogance become more and more, become inflated completely out of proportion. We think of ourselves along such lines as, oh, what great, wonderful practitioners we are, what great and wonderful qualities we have achieved in the course of our practice. We truly think ourselves to be someone who now is truly able to benefit others because of our practice, because of the position that we might have, etc. If that is the case, then we have truly perverted this mind training, because then the very opposite of that which is intended has come to pass. We have not worked away at our egos, at the belief, at the clinging on to the belief of this self in such a way as to diminish and eventually eradicate it, but we have inflated this ego of ours completely out of proportion. We have made it even bigger, even stronger than it was to start out with. In this case, we would have completely defeated the purpose of mind training, and then the opposite of its intention would have come to pass. So, naturally speaking, of course, that is again something that is to be utterly avoided.
Pena aranga jando Roma la soba tendila nasa mandrava lena tini ngala ji mia pune ta che chen deno ji la soba ten zogre tendila rewa che ji tendavari iyun sane tendi rewa che ji o ma taro tongji shana pecha satin yong aranga che dunda la mandrava yamba shasana Tige pecha tu kunda las ngala togri no de sambiho mane. Naron da nyamba kinji shena tige sanam kana yobade ngal togri. Hanjin da ta ngare ma yo barba. Hote da wasi shena ta ngala sanam da ngala togri. Tadi sanu tongji yo mare sanu.
I forgot to say something before. Rinpoche said that if we should have practiced in such a way as to have our ego become larger and stronger rather than diminished and eradicated, then whatever practice, let's say like a yidam practice we would have been doing, then this yidam practice, which is like a god, figuratively speaking, would have turned into a demonic influence. That is the meaning of the quote, "Do not allow gods to turn into demons." Therefore, he said that we should rather always take the lower position and see ourselves as the servants of others. And then it continues in the text, saying with yet another piece of advice in which it says, "Do not desire suffering for the purpose of bringing about happiness or joy." This means to say that we should not wish bad upon others so that we may have a benefit thereof. For instance, if we had a sponsor, a benefactor who keeps providing us with whatever necessities, we should never ever entertain such ideas as like, oh, maybe if these people could get a little bit sick, then they would remember me and they would invite me again to their house to perform rituals for them or whatsoever, and I would receive offerings again, or they would give me more offerings than they have been doing until now. Or that we should, for instance, think that our Dharma friends or Dharma brothers and sisters or lamas or monks, that we should entertain such ideas that well, oh, if they would die, then possibly I could inherit their possessions, their tankas and statues, etc. Or that in any which way we should wish misfortune upon others from which we would benefit. That, like so many of these other pieces of advice, is yet another one that is to be avoided. Within ourselves, like, well, such and such a person who causes me harm or distress, those whom we commonly term enemies, that such a person might die, and therefore that negative influence which they have upon us might be removed. It goes without saying that we should never ever entertain such thoughts, that such people whom we experience to be unpleasant for us, making problems for us, etc., that the convenient thing would be for them to die so that we'd be rid of them.
Yana ku jambi ke kata, yana nyarde be kata, yana roa ke kata, yana duba kata. Kandi yana yung, senjin yana pinta pe ke samba zambo de, tani madrawa che gure, jalan tangji.
우리 지당 디캅소 랍사세바다 탐체데 단다바도 강가 랍자도바
랍자리
이제는 믹서도 랍사세바 좀좀
미사도 단디는 랍자 미시데 좀 책임자와 여기라고.
All of which brings us to the final, to the seventh point from among the 7 points of mind training, which is the instruction of that in which we ought to train ourselves. And it says, a quote here, presumably by Chakawaya Shindarje again, says, accomplish or bring about everything with the one yoga, with the one practice. So with whatever, which means to say, whatever it is that we are doing, whether we are eating food or whether we are putting on or taking off our clothes, whether or not we are sleeping or walking or standing around somewhere, whatever activity it might be that we are performing at any given moment, we should never be separated from the ideas of the mind training, of bringing about benefit for the welfare of others with whatever it is that we do, both in thought as well as deed. We should never ever be separated from that intention.
Ayabo mare korong la tani jan dendi yore korong le kan dendi chiso la so maka konde mombo yung chon nre dan ge na ba yung dan dra dong je gen che wa yung dan na ru ge nyan mong ba che ro so ma dan lo jong zan ne gong men de ba da ba ta de tu su ge dan ba chi tu so yung go yore dan ba chi je da ba yung du ta 이 바지에 나랑 기보 말에 생진 당지 런던 자와 그랬더니 동화도 바지 연구요래. 이 바지에 당지 나랑 그 다다게 다네 바지 내에 땅도 탐바를 효지 상. 내가 다인 제게 로나 되는 동네 좀 봐대 세강나 다 나랑 좀 제동 바지 당지 다지랑도 쳇도고.
The next quote says, avert all adversity with the one. Yet again, there is a single practice that we are advised to employ in order to manage all the adverse circumstances in which we might find ourselves. And again, these might be of many different natures. We might find ourselves in the face of people who address us in untoward ways, and this way causes distress, causes problems, etc. We might find ourselves under other influences, which we could term as the influences of God, demons, or spirits. We might find ourselves in such situations where we have lost all enthusiasm for our practice, where we have lost all hope, so to speak, to ever get on with our practice, and lose all interest in order to continue with our practice, like this particular practice of mind training. These types of situations and all sorts of variations thereof might again and again beset us. Instead of giving in to these, we might then find it within ourselves to think, well, I undergo this difficulty this particular difficulty at the moment, but there are so many others out there who experience the same type of difficulty, who on top of that experience even a lot worse than that. Therefore, wouldn't it be nice, wouldn't it be useful if I were able to take all of that negativity, all of that suffering, all these difficulties and the causes thereof, etc., upon myself, wouldn't that be a good idea if I could manage to bring all of this to ripen within myself so that others could become free of it? And with that attitude, we should then proceed to practice the meditation of sending and taking, of exchanging ourselves for others in order to take their suffering and pain, etc., upon ourselves and send all our happiness and joy and the causes thereof to them. The next verse says, there are two things to be done in regard to beginning and end. Now this pertains very much to certain periods of time at which we start out with something until we have completed that something. For instance, if we were a practitioner of such mind training, we could start out by way of thinking or by way of resolving to start something in a certain fashion and to keep the underlying idea, the underlying attitude up until we have completed that thing. For instance, if we would get up in the morning, we could think from this morning, from sunrise or from my getting up until this day is finished, until the sun sets or until I go to sleep, I do not want to be separated from the precious thought of bodhicitta. For the entire duration of this day, I do not want to view anyone as an enemy, as a harm bringer, as an obstacle maker, but I want to go about this in a kind and a compassionate way and bring about, through my positive attitude, bring about the best possible benefit for all beings concerned. That would be a way of acting, a way of behaving according to this tenet in which it says there are two things to be done in regards to beginning and end. Then eventually such a day draws to a close. Let's say we had set the duration of a single day in order to keep up such an attitude. Then when eventually the evening comes, we would be well advised to take stock of what happened during the day, to think back about what it was that we have done during the day, the various people that we've encountered, the various situations that we found ourselves in, and we should check ourselves in such a way as to make sure to remember in which way we acted or we have acted or reacted. In this way we could, for instance, see, okay, in that particular situation I've acted according to my resolve. In that particular situation it didn't work out quite that well. I did feel some anger there, or I had a negative thought in that particular situation. To take stock in such a way as to check ourselves to make sure in which way we have managed to keep up that resolve that we took on upon ourselves. This fly really likes them.
Senjena Tani, Pena Shadanga Tobaya, Jimandu, that day in the Sonju San Garmandu, Tendawa Sana, Tengaru, Gawagam, Senje Tangela, Tetaru, Jalam Tendi, Yumasho, Manande.
On the other hand, we might find that we have done well during that day. We might find out that there was not a single, that we did not incur a single breach of our resolve, that we have truly always been keeping the welfare and benefit of others at heart, that we have been acting in kind and compassionate ways towards others, and that everything went very well. That in turn is a cause for great rejoicing, and even the advice in our commentary here is that indeed we should greatly rejoice in this. And we could even top this by way of wishing that, well, I have been able to do so for the duration of this day, that we hope and pray that also others may be able to do so in the future. The same should be done in regards to all of our commitments which we keep. At the end of such a day, we should take stock of how successfully we were able to keep our commitments, or what breaches of our commitments we have occurred, and then accordingly take it from there. If we have been able to keep all of our commitments pure, to keep them in such a way as not to incur any break, any breach, any damage, then we should greatly rejoice therein, and we should combine this with the wish, with the aspiration that all other people, just like us, may be able to keep their commitments in a similar way in the future. On the other hand, if we should find out, if we should see that we have in any which way damaged our commitments, well, then we should give rise to remorse, to regret about this, and we should wish to repair our commitments in the proper ways, and not to incur such a breach of commitments again. And similarly, we should wish that others may also be able to see our commitments, and to repair breaches if there should be any, and feel the same kind of regret and the same kind of resolve to, in the future, not breach them again.
Tendawa Yona, Tangaran and Tendawa, Dunga Mandrava, Yin, Sani, Mebek, Dunga, Naran, Samla, Dungarata, Jetrota, Lasso, and this is Yoma, yes.
The next quote simply says, "Bear whatever of the two you encounter." The two means either suffering or joy. We might find ourselves in such situations in which just about everything goes wrong. We encounter nothing but distress, suffering, pain, nothing will go right. We are completely distressed about this, and on top of this we might also have this idea like, oh, everything has gone completely out of hand, I do suffer so, and be so full of pity for ourselves. We should be able to bear whatever negative circumstances, whatever adverse circumstances may come our way, in a patient way, without complaining about it, trusting that also such circumstances may eventually come to a close again. Therefore, let us just bear such circumstances without much ado, without further complaining about it. On the other hand, we might also find ourselves in situations of joy, in very nice circumstances in which everything is right. We have the right income, we have a nice place to live, we have all sorts of positive conditions together in such a way as to enjoy ourselves thoroughly. Also, this we have to bear in such a way as not to go completely over the top over this, but to make such positive experiences the basis for our acting in a beneficial way for the welfare of others. Therefore, these two extremes, so to speak, both suffering as well as joy, are to be accepted and are to be used in the best possible way. In particular, if we find ourselves in situations of encountering joyful circumstances, if we encounter such situations in which everything is just right, everything is just good, we have a proper income, we have not a worry in the world, we have a good house and everything that goes together with that, or where we might even find ourselves in situations of having influence over others. In short, when everything is just nice, everything is just swell, then in particular in such situations we should use that situation to bring about benefit for others. For instance, if we were able to influence others, let's say we might have employees and we have knowledge of some of them occasionally misbehaving, then we should use our influence where it is given to talk to them, to point out their erroneous ways and to encourage them to give up negative dealings and wheelings in such a way as to bring about benefit for themselves. So if that is the case, if we have such possibility, and if on top of that we find ourselves in such circumstances which are altogether joyful, we should make that the basis of bringing about benefit and welfare for others as well. In short, it says here in the text, whichever of the two it is, we are well advised to make the very best of it that is possible for us. If it is suffering, if it is distress, if it is adverse circumstances that we encounter, we should learn to become able to bear them, to instead of just complaining about them and feeling great suffering and displeasure about them. And if we find ourselves in positive circumstances, we should use them to the best benefit, to the best purpose that we can bring about through on the basis of them.
다티니제 나랑 양타바 상나 나랑 첸달라 대와 스마라 송지제 공공 토바이베 다티 나랑 소동 집바제는 제 송고래.
Shagawa Yeshidoji continues to say, these both protect like your own life, as if they were your own life. With both, he means the two types of commitments that we can take upon ourselves. We're still in the going on about commitments here. The first type of commitment that is meant here are those commitments of individual liberation, those commitments of the secret mantrayana or vajrayana, as it is called, that one takes upon oneself in the course of one's personal practice. These are to be upheld to the best of all possibility in the most ideal way that we can muster. On top of that, there are the commitments which we take on onto ourselves in particular, as pertaining to this practice of mind training, which are those commitments which allow us to continuously strive for the benefit of beings, to continuously avoid harm for beings in any which way. These two, of course it is said that they are to uphold these two types of commitments purely and vigorously, is said to be the cause, the guarantee for happiness and joy, both in this life as well as in the next. These two are to be upheld, are to be protected, as if they were our own life.
Arang Serenbu Toba, Arang La Longje Chambo, Tendrike Rongdanga, Tobate, Tane, Maziba, Senjin Tangji La Deji Toba, Senjin Tangji, Kewika, Tomar Tangji, Shawai, Lasoba, Tendawa, and Samba Sonjus and Tisambeke, and Yanikona, Tiburi.
Our sole intention should be the one to bring about benefit and welfare for others in whichever way is possible for us. Therefore, we are advised not to get lost in thoughts which simply circle around our own welfare, ideas, activities, etc., which bring about only our own welfare. The welfare of others is to be brought about to the best of our ability in whatever situation, in whatever activity, etc., we might find ourselves.
Kawa, some Rabarsa, Baby Kali Kabori, Tisano Yang Minute Hakuri, Ejiba, Yamumba Tombu, Mushibaka, Maruke, Senji, like Shedan Ki, Tanga Shedan Ki, some Mushiba, the Kali Kabori. Tangoshi Tane, Pardo, Dobarka, Tanshadon the Pan Jomni, Zabakan, Shawase, Tatian Kali Kabori. All Jankia Barkavi, and Momba la Tenda, Topa Mayopa, Jankia Barsabal, Kavari, Tisumba, Tisungate, and Kawasam, Somali, Tela Yenseman, Laburi.
Shagawa Yeshidoji goes on to say there are three difficulties in which we need to train ourselves, or three difficult situations which we need to learn to master. The first is to recognize that we find ourselves under the influence of emotional defilements, of whatever they might be. The second is to avert them or to transform them. The third is to cut the continuity of, or to cut the stream of such emotional defilements. So first, we have to recognize whatever emotional defilement, whatever obscuration might be the predominant one at any given moment. For instance, if we find ourselves under the influence of the defilement of anger, we should be able to know so, to recognize this. Having recognized it, we then move on to the second step, which is to avert or to transform it in such a way as to not allow ourselves to give rise to negative thoughts or deeds under the influence of such an emotional defilement, but possibly even to change it, to turn it around and make it into something useful that can be brought onto the path. And then we have to make sure, as it says, to cut the stream, the continuous stream or the continuity of such an emotion in such a way as to make sure that such an emotional defilement and its negative influences may not come to pass again. So these are the three difficulties, or the three difficult trainings that we need to to train ourselves in, that we need to endeavor in. To reiterate, the root cause, or the very beginning of the problem, is the appearance of the obscuration of the emotional defilement in the first place. Let's stick with the example of anger. Once we find ourselves under the influence of anger, we need to be able to recognize what sort of influence it is that we find ourselves under, what sort of emotion it is that that presently has welled up within our minds. Let's say it is anger, we find ourselves recognizing that it is anger, then at first the recognition of this anger has been accomplished. Yet that in itself is not enough. Of course, we need to pacify that anger in such a way as to not allow it to bring about any negativity. So we strive with various means to pacify this anger in such a way as to not let any further ideas, thoughts, concepts, or even deeds come of it. But simply having pacified it itself, having played it down in such a way as to not be under the influence of it in such a strong way anymore, yet we still have to do away with it lest we fall under the influence of anger. Again, what is to be done in this case is we have to cut the continuity of this anger, of that emotion, of the causes that brings about anger in the first place. And having done so, having employed the proper means to bring this about, we could then continue to wish that all beings, not only ourselves, all beings who find themselves under the influence of anger or any other emotional defilement for that matter, that they may be able to, in the same way, act as we have done, that they may be able to pacify these emotions, that they may be able to cut off the root of these emotions altogether, and in this way interrupt the continuous stream of such emotional defilement.
Any
questions?